My name's Bill McKibben, and I wrote the first book about climate change for a general audience many, many years ago, back in 1989, when I was still in my 20s, a book called The End of Nature. Now, the truth is, we knew most of what we needed to know about climate change back then. When you burn coal, gas, oil, you put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and a lot of it. And the molecular structure of that carbon dioxide traps heat that would otherwise radiate back out to space. In essence, you put a blanket around the planet. And the only thing we didn't know in 1989 was exactly how fast and how hard this was going to pinch. And the story of the last 30 years is twofold. One, it's pinched much harder and much faster even than we expected. So the level of chaos we're already seeing is enormous. We've lost half the summer sea ice in the Arctic. The Gulf Stream and the jet stream have begun to falter. The world's hydrological systems, because warm air holds more water vapor than cold, are in violent chaotic flux. That's why we see these extremes of drought and flood around the planet. That's the first thing we learned over the last 30 years. The second thing we learned is that our political systems have been inadequate at best in trying to cope with this. And the reason is because they've been run roughshod over by the fossil fuel industry, the richest industry in the world, which mounted a massive disinformation campaign to get us to pay no attention to science. That's been effective, and it's delayed action for 30 years, which is a huge problem because climate change is a timed test. If we don't solve it soon, we will never solve it. In fact, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, our greatest climate scientists, have told us that if we have not cut emissions in half by 2030, we will never hit the targets that we set in Paris just a few years ago. So here's the good news. A, we know what we need to do. Engineers have dropped the price of solar power and wind power and batteries by huge amounts, 90% over the last decade. This is now the cheapest power on Earth. There's no technological or financial obstacle that prevents us from remaking our energy system in short order if we really set our minds to it. B, the other piece of good news. Around the world, people have begun to come together in movements large enough to begin to counterbalance that baleful weight of the fossil fuel industry. We see it among young people, Greta Thunberg and all those like her who have organized high school and junior high school students, the Sunrise Movement that's gotten college students and other young people to propose a Green New Deal. I helped found something called 350.org, which was the kind of first iteration of a global climate movement at the grassroots. We've organized 20,000 demonstrations in every country except North Korea. We're beginning to close that gap, but we need many more people engaged in this fight because in the end, that's what climate change is about. Can we force change in our energy system fast enough to prevent even more trauma than we've seen now? We don't know the answer to that. At current trajectories, we will raise the temperature of the Earth 3 degrees Celsius, which is 3 times more than we've raised it already. If we allow that to happen, we will not have civilizations like the ones we're used to. There's simply too much chaos. But we still have some control over the outcome if we move now.